This program contains violent content which may be too intense for some. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. There I am. Gotta sit up a little bit more so I'm in the middle. There. How is everyone tonight? I see we got a few people in here. Well, tonight I just wanted to... Oh, thank you, Olivia. She says, what an intro. Cool. Oh, Nick. Stop. So tonight I wanted to come together and just remember what happened 22 years ago. I know that there's conspiracy theories and everything out there. I don't believe them. I've watched too many individuals who were part of that day describe what happened to them. So I wanted to just come in here and talk, reminisce what we remember about that day. Talk about how our country was after that happened. And you know, what good things came out of it amongst all the bad. Hi, Connor. How you doing? So, where was everyone when they found out what happened that day? It's okay, Andrea. I can tell you that I was working for Cellular One, the cell phone company here in the Midwest, and somebody came out and said a plane hit the Twin Towers, and we actually got to take turns and go into the break room and watch the TV for a couple minutes. And then whoever was in the break room, whenever something else happened, would come and update everybody, which isn't an easy thing to do because at that time we were all on the phones talking to customers. So you just got updates and were able to watch when you could, lunch, break. Olivia says, I was going out the door on my way to work. Yeah. Andrew says, had just gotten my kids on the bus and was waiting on Bob to get home to tell him. And we watched the news all day. Yes. I remember when I got done with work, I watched the news all night. So you were watching TV while you're getting ready for work. Yep. And as I posted last night, there was 2,997 now souls that were enjoying their last evening with their families, loved ones, friends. Some of them were on the job already, the firefighters, the police officers. So they were working. And, didn't think anything about the next day. Connor says, I was at my grandmother's house. I would have been too young to understand what was going on. I learned what happened years later. Oh my goodness, Connor. So that's interesting. I bet for you, it was a learning situation. I know that they teach it in schools, but a lot of what people learn is by watching movies, stories, documentaries. And I said earlier on True Crime Investigates that I think I've seen almost every documentary or show about 9/11. And I also watched the interviews with the individuals that are talking. There's so many of them out there. So many of them out there. Add Olivia too. If you think that intro was good, wait till people see what really happened. Yeah. One of the reasons my two boys became firefighters, EMTs. Yes. After that, a lot of men and women became firefighters or EMTs because of what happened to us. So, yeah. So, a lot of us, or a lot of you were at home getting ready. Some of us were at work. Some of us were too young. So, Connor, I'm interested of what, how you were introduced to 9/11 since you were so young. Miracle Heart says, oh my God, same. I go through phases. Yes, you have to do it in phases because it'll just tear you apart. But I've seen so many of the pictures and everything from 9/11 that when I'm working, what I'll do is I'll play something and just listen to it as I work and cry. I'm a crier when it comes to that kind of stuff. Hey, True Crime Investigates, how are you? So, yeah, rough day. I can tell you that. It was a very rough day. And I did find a couple of videos here that'll have us watch. So let me share my screen. Because this is a day of remembering. And it wouldn't be right if we didn't show some of what happened. So this first video is very short. It's only 35 seconds, but it shows the first tower being hit. So let's take a look at that.
I had one. Did we get on that?
I don't know how many of you have had the chance to go to New York, but I was able to go there last year. And I can tell you that if I heard a plane like that, I wouldn't have just been glancing up. I would have been following that plane because you don't hear planes in that area. You know, and these guys were just checking for a gas leak. And you could hear their reaction. They were shocked. Everybody was shocked. Jordan, I was in second grade. All I remember was being in class and the teacher turned on the TV. And eventually my parents picked me up early from school. Yeah, so you and Connor are in the same situation where you were young and don't remember what happened, but just remember certain things about that day. Yeah, I've heard that one. That one is very tough to hear, Miracle Hearts. Such a sad day. Sad, sad day. And you're right. You don't think that people, I mean, we're used to war, okay? Things like that. But you're not used to individuals hijacking a plane and flying it into buildings like that day. Oh my goodness. So your grandma was in New York. Wow. So Connor, your parents told you stories about that day, and then as you got older, you were able to research it and watch stuff on it? Yeah. So Jordan says, I have a recommendation for those who enjoy musicals. There's an awesome musical called Come From Away. Oh, helping the 38 planes that landed there. That's one of the things that we're going to talk about. If I cheat, then report me, says my dad was at the vet and he was sitting in his truck listening to the radio. Yeah. Mark says, I went to do a siding repair 70 miles away from home and drove back listening to Bob and Tom out of Indianapolis discussing, oh yeah. I think it was a shock to everybody. Like I said, nobody expected somebody to fly planes into buildings like that. And we all thought it was an accident when the first plane hit. Everybody thought it was an accident. What could have happened? Well, and there's so much confusion as to what size plane it was. You know, if it was a passenger plane or a little plane, and on a beautiful day, how could they not see the building? Well, then, let me see here. Then the second plane hits. Nope, that is not the video I want. There we go. And what is crazy about the second plane hitting is that many of us watched it happen on national TV. And that is definitely something that you don't normally see. Yeah, everybody thought it was an accident. I was at work when it happened. Oh, so you went to New York this year? Yes. I went to the museum and the memorial. It's very sad. I told Anthony, I said, I've watched so many documentaries and videos on 9/11 that there was so many names that I recognized as I was walking around the memorials, the two memorials. And every name I recognized, I dipped my hand in the water and put water over their names. You know, you hear this and see this on TV, and then to be there is completely different. It's very, oh, hang on. It's a very somber time. Being there, walking around those two big, huge pools of water. Yeah, it really is. It's crazy. But it's beautiful at the same time. You know, I can just imagine what the families go through every year when they go there and read the names and how they feel. Because truly, that area is a graveyard. Underneath everything that was built, I'm sure there's still parts of individuals. Hi, CJK. How are you? And the memorial is, the museum is beautiful. It really is. You know, you go down these stairs, so you're going underground, and I believe this today I heard 7 stories down. And they have a big room that you can walk around with the one wall and the fire truck, and you're allowed to take pictures in this area. But then you go into the actual museum and they say no photography, no video. Even though people have taken pictures and video, you're not supposed to. And there's so much to see that I know that I missed things. Hi, Jill. You know, there's things that I know that I missed now. And so I want to go back one day and be able to walk through it again and look at everything and take my time and make sure I don't miss anything. That had to have been one of the hardest things of that day. Connor, watching it and hearing it. And if it was hard for us to watch it on TV, the people down there, that had to have been almost unbearable. After getting back home, I was watching the news on TV. Kids were outside playing. They come running into the house saying the Air Force One flanked by 2 fighter jets was flying over. Yeah, it was. That had to have been an impossible choice to make. It really had to have been. But it was a decision of which way did you want to go? Did you want the power in the way that you left this world by jumping out? Or did you stay and let the smoke take you in and, so it's crazy. All right, let me play the second video. Yeah, I was glad that they stopped showing that on the news because, like I said, it was hard enough to watch on TV. I can't imagine being there in person for those firefighters standing in those buildings, listening to that, knowing what was happening. All right. Imagine standing there, seeing that plane that close, and watching it hit. Now, that is probably the best view anyone has of any of the videos that I have seen. We all saw it from a far distance, and just this little thing coming in to the frame, and then the big fireball. But for people that were standing there just like that and saw that plane that clear and heard it, that has to just be, they were in shock because you could tell by their reaction. Hi, Robin. Thanks for joining us. Yes, Miracle Hearts. There are videos to this day where you can still hear the bodies. Hi, Jan. How are you? Very terrifying, CJK. Yes, takes your breath away. And you're right. After that second one hit, everybody knew that it was on purpose. That was no freak accident. Absolutely. Everybody knew. I remember watching the TV and the anchors on the news station being so shocked. And a lot of them didn't even see the plane on the first pass. They just saw the big fireball. We all did. It wasn't until they, what they call, re-racked the footage and played it over and over again that they actually saw the plane coming in and angling for the tower. On top of all that, who knows how many people were affected by the smoke and dust? Yes. Yes. Exactly. more people have died since 9/11 than the 2,997 died on September 11th. And it's from the dust and debris. So let's see here. Next video I have is, so you're just getting used to the fact you're watching this on TV. You're just getting used to the fact that these two huge towers are burning. And you know they're burning because you see the black smoke and you see the fire raising. And unfortunately, people jumping. And you think about the people that were on those planes. And then you hear the telephone calls being made from those planes, the flight attendants, and how scary it was for them. Using words like rapid descent. You know, we're going down way too quick, way too fast. It had to have been a nightmare for them as they were flying towards those buildings. It had to have been. And when we thought things couldn't get any worse, well, they did. Because then the Pentagon was hit. Let's take a look at that. And it was so quick. The camera almost didn't even catch it. It was that quick. It's hard to tell that a plane went in there. And the only reason we know that it did is because there was eyewitnesses that watched it. The only good thing about this incident is that that section had just been remodeled and it wasn't full, thankfully. Otherwise, more lives would have been lost at the Pentagon. And you saw the people pouring out, carrying out injured from there. One of the things that truly bothers me about 9/11, when somebody says September 11th, a lot of people only think about the Twin Towers. Google September 11th. Everything is about the Twin Towers. You actually have to put in September 11th Pentagon or September 11th Shanksville in order to get anything to come up about those two sites, because all of it is about the towers. And there was lives lost at each and every location, and each and every location is just as important as the Twin Towers. It's infuriating when people say they didn't happen at the Pentagon for that reason. It wasn't like the, yeah. Exactly. You try telling the people that were at the Pentagon that day that theirs wasn't as bad as what happened in New York. Granted, there was a lot more people in New York, and the buildings completely collapsed in New York, but it was just as bad for them as it was for the New York people. My sister works for the FBI and was living in DC. She helped clean up the Pentagon. Yeah. Exactly. So we're already reeling as the country and as people and citizens because the two towers both got hit. Then our major defense, the Pentagon, gets hit. And I think that is when people truly started to really freak out around the world. I really do. It was bad. It was devastating when the towers got hit. But when the Pentagon got hit, that was serious business. And we knew they meant business. And if it wasn't for the people on Flight 93, it would have happened again. Now, where was it going to hit? White House? Senate building? We don't really know. I mean, they're guessing. They're guessing as to where they think it was going to hit. So I got a couple more videos here. Let me play those.
You're here, Cleveland Center.
United 93 is one of 4,500 planes in the sky above America. It's under the control of Al-Qaeda terrorist Ziad Jarrah, and just 34 minutes from its target, the Capitol. A top-secret recording from United 93's cockpit reveals what happens in its final moments. Few people have ever heard the tape.
You could hear the sound of the wind passing over the wings. So there was a lot of background noise, but even so, it was fascinating.
You could hear the scuffling. You could hear people moving quickly. The sense was that there were several people working together. You could hear a hijacker being hit with some type of object, and you could hear the pain that he felt when he was hit. And it was a cry and a wail as if he had been fatally struck.
All of a sudden, Saeed, one of the hijackers in the front, yells, "Fight!" And his buddy said, "Yeah."
They were realizing that the passengers and crew members were coming to get them.
We started to see change in the aircraft's flight. The airplane started making some pretty extreme maneuvers. Turned to the north, it turned to the south. It did like a 270-degree turn. I didn't know what was going on there.
Cleveland enlists the help of a nearby light aircraft.
We're 56865 Cleveland Center. We have Boeing 757. Can you see him up there, sir?
We've got him.
What altitude does it appear to be he's at?
He's probably 8,000 feet. He's behind us and only about 1,000 feet above us.
I advise you stay away from that aircraft. Go north as fast as you can.
In the opening moments of the passenger fightback, the terrorists lose altitude and veer away from their target of Washington, D.C.
And then they ran up the length of a 757 with all their improvised weapons, and you could hear them coming. And we could hear it in the recording. It became louder and louder, people yelling, and I'm thinking maybe they should have just done it quietly.
There was smashing and just sounded like things were being banged around and commotion.
And then we all heard Tom's voice. All of us just jolted. He was trying to get home to us. You could hear him yelling in the cockpit, the cockpit.
They were chanting. Tom Burnett started that, in the cockpit, and they were going, in the cockpit, in the cockpit. They rattled the heck out of those guys in the front. They were terrified.
If you can, report what he's doing, sir.
It looks like he's rocking his wings, according to my observer.
Roger.
Keeps rocking back and forth.
By shaking the aircraft back and forth, left to right, the hijackers tried to dislodge the passengers.
You could hear the passengers and crew members outside of the cockpit door.
Really loud, and the guys yelling together and encouraging one another.
You could also hear the hijackers inside the cockpit.
They said, is that it? Should we put her in the ground now? It's no, wait. And then you could hear the noise blasting them. Get him!
And then Tom said, I'm injured. It was in a way that you had the sense that he was saying, don't wait for me. Keep going.
You could hear they were working together. And Dina said it was Tom that said, if we don't get in there, we'll die.
Powerful words. If we don't get in there, we're going to die. They knew it. They absolutely knew it. But they still tried. You got to give them credit for that. They absolutely tried. My step-grandparents live an hour away from 93. They seen it and took pictures of it. Yep. Had to have been terrifying on board. They weren't, though. I mean, they were, but they were also calm. They were getting information from their loved ones. They took a vote. And then they all went up there. Most of them went up there. And yes, the scanner has been doing a tribute all day and replaying all the audio traffic from that day. There's also videos on YouTube with that you can hear too. It breaks your heart every time you see those individuals in that last video. You know, these are mothers and wives and sisters, and it's got to be, they're the only ones that have been able to hear what happened on that plane. And I think it's right that they did get to listen to that. And the rest of the world, even though we're curious, it's not for us to hear. It's for them. So, as much as I would love to hear it, I agree with the decision just to let the family listen to it. So, everybody's in turmoil. Whether you're directly affected by this, by being in the buildings, or standing there watching what's happening, or you're watching your television. It was different for all of us that day. Being there in person and seeing that, I can't imagine. I really can't. But, and you think of the people on the planes, like I said, but they weren't the only ones affected either. Before the planes crashed, you had the people on the planes, the flight crew, but you also had the people in the towers for the airports, the air control traffickers. I mean, can you imagine hearing a message that says we have some planes in an Arabic voice? In your mind's like, nah, they didn't say that. And they had to have somebody go look and listen to the tape to find out if that's exactly what they said. My heart goes out to all of the families and friends that were affected by this. And the hardest part of all of it is that normally when you lose someone, you have that day of grieving, and you have a funeral or a celebration of life, something like that, and you're able to move on. Well, these families, they can't move on because every single year they're reminded of it. Every single year. It's all brought back fresh as the day it happened. There's things that are shown on TV, programs. Like you said, like Andrea said, on the scanner, they're replaying the audio from that day. They don't ever get to move on because it was such a national thing. We saw it on TV. It took place on TV. And every year, I can only imagine that at some point it gets better and then it gets bad again because they know that anniversary's coming up. I know a lot of them just leave. They go somewhere where they can be with their families. A lot of families do go to the 9/11 memorials, but a lot of them don't. They just go and leave and spend time with their families. They don't watch the TV for a week beforehand, a week after. You know, you don't want anybody to ever go through that, but these people are. They absolutely are. So I thought we'd just remember, share some pictures. They were. They absolutely were, CJK. They had so many doctors and nurses in staging locations waiting for these injured people, and they never came. They finally took down the staging areas for medical help and just waited to see if anybody came to the hospitals to get help. Let's see here. Yeah, and if that wasn't bad enough, you have all of these people now passing away because they were there helping. They were affected by it that day, but those that continually went down to that site and helped, they have cancers. They have so many abnormal things, diseases, and everything that the rest of us don't have, they suffer from. And like I said earlier, more people have died since 9/11 than they did on 9/11. This picture, I think everybody saw this picture, and this is when everybody became united. Truly, after the shock wore off, everybody truly became united, and you couldn't get a flag, an American flag. The flags flew off the shelf so fast. Everybody was with the United States. You were nice to each other. There wasn't all this hate and ugliness. There was some, but the majority of it was love and empathy and caring for your neighbor. And so it's hard seeing today and knowing what it was like afterwards. Jan says it's too painful for the families and loved ones. Yeah, it is. Oh, there's so many that have PTSD. I mean, I've watched documentaries of men and women stating, even to this day, there's certain times where it kicks in and it takes them right back, and they're still in that stairwell and feeling the building shake as the other plane hit the other building, and or after the first tower fell, being in the other building, waking up screaming. That never goes away. I saw something earlier on YouTube, and some families still have nothing physical of their deceased loved ones to bury. Yes. They are still identifying people with DNA as DNA advances. But there are parts of individuals that are buried in the museum in a vault that still have not been identified. 22 years later. And each time DNA advances, they retest those parts that they have to try to identify those individuals. Some families, all they got was like a little urn with gravel from the site because they didn't have their loved ones' parts or body. And you hear from some of the families how they finally found some of the parts of their loved one. They were able to bury them. And then 6 months, a year, 2 years later, they're continually notified each time a part of their loved one is found. That's why I said it's a never-ending thing for these families. We remember the spirit of those lost on September 11, 2001 lives in each of us. And just never forget. Never forget. I can tell you that standing at these pools and looking at these, tuning in from band, haha, that's my son, M.A. Marvin. Go and do your band work there, buddy. Anyways, standing there, and I have to say, I give my son a lot of credit. My daughter, she likes to move quickly, right? So she looks at things and she moves on. Me, on the other hand, I like to stand there and reflect. And my son stood there with me as I went and looked at every single one of those names and dipped my hand in the water and put the water over the name. He was very patient with me, and I love him and appreciate that about him. Took care of his mom that day. And the view at night is amazing. With it all lit up, this picture doesn't even do it justice. It's absolutely amazing at night. The Pentagon. One of the women described the fireball, and I can't quite remember how she described it, but how many of us actually see a fireball, a huge fireball coming towards us? I don't ever want to experience that. But these people who were lucky enough to be in that area, in the Pentagon, and live, they know what that experience is like. Yeah, Connor, they are. So just like the flag was put up at the towers, the flag at the Pentagon, and these men standing up there saluting made us proud. These individuals who did these acts made us realize that we weren't defeated. We were going to stand together and we were going to move on. And that's what I said, on a devastating day, there was good that came out of it. We did come together as a country, as a nation, as individuals, families, neighbors. Those relationships became better because of this situation. I think this picture is one that always haunts me. It always haunts me because that's what individuals saw from that area. And in one of the videos that I've watched many times, the air traffic control is talking to NIADS, and she says, what is going on with Flight 93? And the ground, or the air control says he's down. And she goes, "Oh, when did he land?" And he goes, "No, that it's down." And she goes, "Oh, it's down?" And he goes, "Yes." So just those words with that picture, with that smoke cloud. Yikes. You're right. We've all developed some relationships and friendships and even love out of these tragic circumstances. There is good that arises out of evil and out of this. You're right. And just imagine you're looking for an airplane that has crashed. There's not much to look at besides a big crater in the ground. And now today, it's beautiful. I've seen pictures. Some of you have said that your relatives have or live close and that you've gone here or your relatives have gone here. One day I will go to Washington and see the Pentagon Memorial, and one day I will make it to Pennsylvania to see the Flight 93 Memorial. Because as beautiful as the memorials are at the Pentagon and in New York, this is the one that I'm sure is going to hit home the most. Knowing that the path you're walking is the path that that plane flew before it went straight down into the ground. And then you have their, what is this, the actual name of this? The Freedom Bell Tower or something like that. But I heard that these wind chimes are just beautiful when you sit there and you listen to them. And it's supposed to be the voices of the people on that plane, represent the voices of the people on that plane. And a lot of people are like, well, what happened to the big divot in the ground? Well, it was covered up eventually, and a large rock was placed there. The only people that go out to that area are the people that maintain the property and family members. Nobody else is allowed out to that rock. Liberty Bell, that's it. And it's amazing. You see a picture like this. It's amazing that anything was found from that plane. But there were pieces that were found. And at the museum in New York, there's a room just for the Shanksville incident. And one of the things in there is Tom Burnett's credit card. So everything was pretty much pulverized, except for some things. I believe there was a watch, his credit card, and some other things that were found as they were digging in there. And there was some pieces of the plane in the wood lines that they did find. But for the families looking at that, that's got to be gut-wrenching too. Here's just some pictures of all the posters that were hung up around the city. They've put in a lot of them into the museum. They also have an area which I missed. So that is one area that I'm going to make sure next time I go that I visit. You have the pictures of these individuals, and the families have made audio telling you about their loved one that you can listen to for each person if you wanted to. So that is one of the areas that I definitely want to see the next time I go there that I missed. So these were the two pilots, Charles Jones and Leroy Homer, from Flight 93. We have different flight paths. Shows how they turned. You know, and Flight 93 went the farthest before they turned around. The pilot of that flight held off the charge and the attack. They went the farthest before they turned around. And then there's another picture of the rock. And you can see how they let most of the field grow up and the flowers around it. And then they just continue a straight path out to the rock. They mow that area and that's it. So does anybody have anything they want to share? I mean, I know you guys have been sharing in the comments as we're talking and going through this. Anything you want to share about how it was for you in the time after this incident and what you experienced, what was good, what was bad? Jan says, oh my God, I didn't know that. Yeah. And I'm assuming that is the part where I was talking about what was found in the crater in the ground and around it. I know there's other items that were found, but I believe that they are housed at the museum part in Shanksville. So since I haven't been there, I don't know what all is there. And for Connor and let's see here. I believe Jordan are two young ones. I'm glad that the videos and the documentaries and even the movies that have been made are out there for you guys to see. It's important that each generation knows what happened that day. And in the true crime community, we all know that this happens on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. People's lives are taken. But to lose that many lives in one day, It's just, it's still hard to wrap your mind around it for those of us that saw it on TV and were there in person. So I'm glad that the future generations will help us honor these individuals, all the police officers, all the firefighters, all the volunteers that went and worked at these places and saw these atrocities. I'm glad that you are learning about this and you will help us in the future keep their memories alive. There's just no end to the randomness of the events that day. People were saved by being late to work, taking a different train, getting breakfast, and people died that were only in New York for a meeting. You're right. Some people stood where they were standing, and everybody to the right of them died, and everybody to the left of them died or survived, or vice versa. It was very hard to connect with what you were hearing that day. Very hard. I remember it being such a sad time for a long time, but yet it seemed we were so united. Yes. All the flags were waving. People were sad. Kind of still terrified because we didn't know if anything else was coming. But yet so united. Stood by one another, helped each other. And on my way home, the sun was shining and birds singing as if nothing had changed, but everything changed. You're right. In the blink of an eye, everything changed. And when you talk to people, they will say, this is how it was pre 9/11. The world was very different, very simple. Then you have post 9/11, where things are downhill, have gone downhill so bad. Hate, anger, distance. People are at each other's throats. A lot of people don't think about people and their feelings. It's all about them. So tonight, before I sign off, I wanted to leave with I guess it's a poem. In memory of 9/11, in the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. By Rabbi Sylvan Kamens and Rabbi Jack Reimer. Never forget. You're welcome, Miracle Hearts. Thank you all for joining me tonight in remembering them. Let's not just remember them this one day a year. Let's keep them in our hearts and our thoughts and help their legacies live on each day, each month of each year, and not just on this one day. Thank you, everyone, for coming and joining me tonight in this time of remembrance. I love you all. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye.